Hi there, I'm Georgina Langdale, and this is The Soul Garden, which is a podcast that I have for the Centre for Nature Connection. And we've got a really, really special interview today with my guest, Joanna Huriwai. We're going to be exploring the ways that we can really care for each other in life and at the end of life. And we're doing this because in society today, there is such a fear about death. And there's a kind of almost, it's hardly even seen as a natural part of life, which it is. And so we can all relate to the idea and the experience of conversations about death being pushed away. But I suspect that we can also relate to the experience of thinking, I wish I'd asked that question, or if only I'd known really how to be able to help that person. I think that care is largely seen through the lens of medical care, but what I'm really, really interested in is the ideas around non-medical care, the ways that we can help a whole person, and in that I'm thinking their physical life, their emotional life, creative life, intellectual life, and spiritual life. And for me, over the past decade in particular, the journey, the exploration of this has become an odyssey. And it's been beautiful and challenging and painful and wonderful and life enriching. And I've trained with all sorts of people along the way, from shamans and healers and Reiki masters to training in as a death doula and in end-of-life care. And I've worked as a funeral director. But now I'm teaching and coaching online in person and really looking at how we care for each other in life and at the end of life and beyond. And I have a course called The Natural Carer, and it's all about nature, compassion, and soul in care at the end of life. And with that in mind, I'd really like to introduce my beautiful guest, Joanna Huriwai, who's come to join me today. Joanna, welcome. Thank
Lovely.
you. Great. Thank you too. So, Joanna, would you tell us a little bit about Joanna, who you are and family and where you're located and
Certainly.
Yeah.
Well, my physical surroundings, I live in the Hutt Valley of New Zealand. And who I am? Ooh, I'm a lot of things. I'm a sister, an auntie, a mother. I've been a wife, a girlfriend, a granddaughter, a niece, a cousin, a nurse, a midwife, a grandmother, an auntie, a great aunt. I'm all those things. I've been a nurse and a midwife.
Gosh.
And I've been a rogue and a drunkard in my early days.
Yeah.
Now I'm pretty tame, and yes, and now I'm probably in a stage where I'm bearing back to being me, whoever that person is. Yeah. As part of all those things. All those things you are all part of you.
Yeah.
But you're more as well. So I guess that's all part of me. A child of the universe, you know.
Child of
thing. Yeah.
Drawing on all of those relationships and influences forward and backwards through time. By the sounds of things.
Yes, and I think that's good. Relationships are often your relationships to everything, you know, like the people, the land you live on, the work you do. It's all those relationships that build you and make you who you are.
So I think it would be interesting for people to hear how we met. And I thought that it might be you to answer that question and explain that for people. So would you like to talk about how we came together and what that meant for you, and we'll explore it a bit more.
So I'm a member of the Grove of the Summer Stars, which is a druid grove, and I've been a member of that particular group for a number of years now, and we celebrate the 8 festivals of the year, and I think it was Samhuinn that we were celebrating, and Pamela, who is our modron, said, we had this lady Georgina who was coming down, and Georgina does a lot of interesting work around death, and she was prepared to do a little workshop or have a little discussion before we celebrated Samhain, which seemed a really good time to do it. So because of my own personal circumstances, I have terminal cancer, it seemed like, that would be very interesting. And we'd had a Lunasa camp a few months previously where we had just started to touch on that whole subject about how do we as druids first look on death, and how would we like to celebrate or hold ritual around death. So we'd started that ball rolling, and so it was a really good time for Georgina to appear as a OBOD member and come down and offer this discussion to us. And so that was the first time that you and myself met, along with my sister Moira, Tony, Pamela,
and Catherine.
Catherine. Sorry,
yeah.
Catherine.
Yeah.
And Catherine. So it was lovely. It was we sat in front of the fire and we had chocolate and hot drinks, and we actually shared what was a lovely discussion, more than a workshop, I'd say.
Yeah.
It was lovely. And so we heard your story, and you were so good to share your story with us and your work, which was all very interesting and led to a whole discussion around how people deal with that end stage of life and ritual around it. Yeah. And so that's how we met, and then after that we were able to celebrate Samhain, which was really cool, at the Woolshed.
Can you explain for people who may not be familiar what Samhain is before we keep digging deeper? I think that they will find it quite interesting and appropriate in light of this discussion.
Okay. Oh gosh, I would have looked it all up.
Just in simple terms, it's fine. Yeah.
Samhain comes at that time of year. It's started to get dark. The season is changing. We always say that the veil is very thin at Samhain and Beltane. Beltane is a spring ritual. Samhain is sort of coming into those late autumn winter rituals. And it was a time for people to look at the past year. It was a time to think about your ancestors and the people who had died, and just go into that sort of dark. I really enjoy Samhain. It's a dark ritual. It's a deep ritual. It's a really a good time to stop and think about the ancestors and those that that have passed, that you hold dear to you. And it does feel like that. It's a time of year that does feel like that the veil is thin between the worlds, and it's time to stop and reflect.
Yeah. I found it very moving as a festival as well, to make us. Nature has a beautiful way of reminding us of the cycle of life and the circle and the way that seasons change. So it changes also for us, and having that chance to kind of step back and forwards, I think, in time, to have that moment to pay respects and stuff and feel close to ancestors is really beautiful. And I also think of the way the energy, in the trees is just heading down, down, down into the roots, and the sort of, the winter dark night of the soul for the tree as well, can be incredibly healing for people. So Pamela rang me and asked me to come as well, invited me to come because of the work I'm doing around end-of-life care. And your sister made a really interesting point where she said afterwards, she said, there's no space. It doesn't feel like there's really any space in society at the moment to have really open and frank discussions around end of life and after death care. And I know in my own experience, part of what led me on this journey was, when I look back now, I didn't even know the questions that I could ask, because I didn't even, everything is kept so hidden. And so part of the session, the lovely afternoon we had in front of the fire with chocolates and cups of tea, was to create a space to open up some of those questions. And for me, it was incredibly special as well, with you as part of it. I mean, we all face our mortality at some stage in our life. And, and in traditions like Buddhism and things, we face it very early on, which actually gives us a whole lot of freedom, I think, and liberation around the living of life. But generally, people don't want to think about it until it's right there. In 1927, there was a guy called Francis Peabody. He was a physician, and he lectured at Harvard Medical School. And he said, the art of care of the patient is in caring for the patient. And he was really urging the students coming through Harvard and things to think, to never lose sight of the whole person. Has your experience to date, do you feel seen as a whole person within the medical paradigm?
That's a very interesting
Especially
question.
as a nurse as well.
Yeah. And having been a health professional, yes, the strain on the whole service with people going into being health professionals because they want to help other people, I think. The system is very scientific.
Yeah.
And from the top down, I don't think they always look at the holistic, they don't practice in a holistic way. But I think certainly nurses see it all the time, because we care for people and we see people with the same conditions react differently because of circumstances that affect them. And I think it's very hard, really. I think I feel okay because I know the system and I don't look for that support from the system. Right. And there are, you can refer people to social workers who probably can refer you to counsellors and that sort of thing. In acute scenarios, you need to just
get to the hospital.
Stop the person from dying, sort of thing. So you don't have time for all the lovey-dovey stuff. I probably wouldn't look for that sort of thing within the system.
Right.
On an individual basis, though, like sometimes people see you as a task. Certainly you see that.
Right.
And then sometimes you can connect
Yeah.
with people. So it really, it's that thing that it comes down to people.
Yeah. Yeah.
You could be the the person that needs an IV put in, that the cancer patient over there that needs an IV put in, or you could be, oh gosh, I had a great talk with that lady and da 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 da, and you connect, and that is really down to interpersonal skills and the actual person. Yeah. So there has been a little bit of a change over the years now to train health professionals to look at healing hands and other things, and I think people are a lot more open to take into consideration. It's a little bit like maybe in the past there wouldn't have been much room for Tikanga Maori in medical care. But now it's sort of opening up so that people do accept it, and they realise that maybe somebody will be using rongoa or that sort of thing, or Pacifica people might be using their stuff, or Chinese people, and there's a preparedness to work within that frame for people. And I see that there's been a shift, certainly in New Zealand anyway, towards encompassing that need for people. Yeah. And more than just, I think initially it was a little bit of a, how do you say, tick the box, or, lip service. But I think there is a lot more now in which people are prepared to incorporate it. Although, maybe people of different ethnic groups might be to differ. I think it's a lot better than it was.
Yeah. When I'm working with people as they're kind of starting to look at the fullness of life, which means, dying as well, one of the things I love doing with them is to really get them to think about the things that bring them comfort in all aspects of their life. And the thing that I have found very interesting is how there's a lot of assumptions almost that we don't say the things that we'd really like. I give an example of somebody who hates having her hair brushed in life, and she was saying, oh my God, if I'm lying on the bed and someone thinks they're caring for me by brushing my hair and I can't speak, that's going to be like torture. It's a kind of funny example, but I thought it raises a really interesting thing of how do we, what are the things that are going to help us beyond that comfort? And I spoke about this idea of kind of making a book of wishes, of recording all of those things, the piece of music you like, or the things that you think will bring you comfort. What has that conversation that we had done for you with the conversations with your whānau since then?
I guess it made me think, it made me think about different scenarios, and it made me think, I probably haven't had big discussions actually. It's made me more sit back and think, it takes me a while to, come to a conclusion I guess. I'm a bit of a sit on the fence, maybe, or, I can see the good side of that, the bad side of that, like da-da-da-da-da, that sort of thing. But I know after we had the workshop, Moira kept saying, oh, that's really put me at my ease, now I understand things. Now I think you need to do da-da-da-da-da and, all of that sort of thing. So, and that made me think, because I could see from her point of view, other people in my family may feel like that too. And so I have come to the conclusion that I need to have a big talk to them, about things to put them at their ease.
Yeah.
Too, and to save. I'm probably more of a person that would say, don't do this, than do this. I'm pretty easygoing. Anything can go, but don't do that. Yeah, definitely. It's like the hair brushing person. I bet they'd say, don't brush my hair, whatever you do. But they might leave it open because, it's not just you are the person that's dying and you're leaving, but those people that are staying, they're going to have grief too, and they're going to want to do the right thing. And for some people that might be they know what's right, they know what's right, or they don't know what's right, or and they're scared of doing the wrong thing. So I guess I do need to sit down and give them permission for the things that they need to feel okay. Because I come from a family of very strong-minded people who, I could just imagine lying on the bed and everyone's having a punch up over me because no, she wouldn't want that. Yes, she would. So, for their benefit too. So it's, because these are stressful and situations, and the stress levels for some people rise, and for other people they can just sit with it and be at peace with it. So definitely it started me thinking, because I was quite sure about things what I thought, but it's like if you're in a semi-coma, you're not controlling the space, are you?
No.
So so I had to look at it from their point of view. And so that made me think, oh, what can I do to help them help me?
I remember when I look back when my mother was dying, I and even just not in the immediate thing, in the few weeks leading up, one of the things that still kind of haunts me to this day was how helpless I felt, because I didn't really know what she wanted. And I think it's interesting in life, we have this idea we know a person, but when that day-to-day communication, verbal, is taken away, actually a whole lot of stuff can fall into a massive void, and you go, I don't know. And even then I didn't even know, I hadn't even got to the evolution of my own being to think, I could have asked her this and that, and it would have been really helpful for now. I just kind of went, help.
Oh
and that actually became part of the motivation for doing this work, because I thought, gosh, if I can help other people feel less helpless and less, fearful of this phase of life for everybody in the room, gosh, that would be just something really helpful to do. One of the things that I work with, and of course Druidry is a very, very nature-based spirituality and connects us beautifully to nature, regardless of wherever we've been in the world, whatever our lineage is, it all ends up back with a nature-based connection. In the 1400s in Italy, there was a guy called Marsilio Ficino, and he was a physician and a scholar, and just an amazing guy. And he used to call himself a physician of the soul. And so if you went to see him in his day, he would sit you down, and among the things he would tell you is, go take a walk in nature. You know, we hear doctors today starting to say, oh, nature is really good therapy. But he would say, you need to go and walk in nature. You need to go at night into a scented garden and breathe in that beautiful fragrance. Really take note of the landscapes that give you pleasure and well-being. He also talked about music. So he saw, and many before him and many since, that the universe has its own music, you know, and the body and things resonate at different levels and, you know, notes and things. So part of his prescription would be to compose on his lute the kind of cosmic chords of the universe that related to that person. Really beautiful idea. So, you know, Cosimo de Medici or whoever his patron would, you know, lie back on the chaise longue, and Marsilio would play music. So he was a really amazing music therapist. The other thing he said is pay real attention to the art and the color and things you see around you. So he said, the things that you see, you know, the art on your wall, the fresco on your wall, these are the things that you'll look at. So what is beneficial is to have things that nourish your soul. And in preparing for today's talk, I asked you to do a little bit of homework, and one of it was to pick a painting that really means something to you. And I'd love it if we could discuss that. Now, if you imagine through that Renaissance lens of the idea of how does this painting feed your soul?
It's of Hini Nui Te Po lying asleep on her back.
Yeah.
And the little lizard is about to crawl inside and get
chomped.
You know, and that's Maui Tiki Tiki, who is trying to defy death.
Right.
And on the side, it's got the manu watching, and I really loved it because the image of it was of a real strong woman. Like, she's got really strong thighs, and, you know, she's this naughty little Maui person who's shape-shifted. And it's got nature at the side, and it's that whole story of Maui trying to defy death and crawl inside the vagina of Hini Nui Te Po, and he's supposed to be able to come out through her mouth to defy death, but of course he doesn't. And it's sort of like, you know, it's quite funny. It's on a whole lot of levels. I liked it just on the painting. You know, I liked the strength of Hini Nui Te Po. How, you know, she's got strong thighs. She's got a good strong body. But it's also that how man tries to defy what is. You know, like people chop their heads off and put them in the freezer and think that somebody's going to give them a body to put their head on in, you know, 500 years, and they're going to be the same person, or freeze their whole body until somebody, you know, they just to do that, really, my personal belief is that you're a little bit out of sync with nature, and this artwork brings up all these sort of ideas, really, about, you know, some things just are, you know, some things just are in nature, some things just are, and we just have to roll with it, you know. So it brings up all those things, you know. It's a lovely picture.
She's such a talented and amazing artist, isn't she?
Yeah, it's in her book, wahine toa, and it's got that other image in there too, I think. Great images, strong woman,
Yeah,
Yeah,
lovely.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And they're women that everybody can relate to, not just Māori, even though
Yeah.
they're, portrayed as Māori women.
Yeah. You talking, this the legend and Maui kind of trying to sneak in through her vagina and out, defying death, made me think about your work as a midwife. Do you feel that your work as a midwife has also, in a funny way, prepared you for when you've been working with patients and caring for patients at the end of their lives and things like that? Do you find that it has helped you with that kind of life cycle?
Yes, I came to midwifery a bit later than nursing,
Mm-hmm.
and I sort of feel blessed really because it is a cycle. Birth and death is a cycle, and I think yes, it's this whole miracle of people, how we're born, how a woman gestates a baby within her. You're not here and then you're here. You know, um, how does that work? And then you're here, you're not here, and then you're here, and then you're here, and you're not here.
Yeah.
That whole cycle of life. It's sort of like it's quite mind-blowing really, and to be physically involved with it, hands-on. It's been a real blessing, and it sort of I feel really sort of in sync with, the modern world has really separated us from our bodies, like, it's not acceptable to have wrinkles. You've got to have Botox up and stick collagen in your lips and have plastic surgery. And, you've got to, death is so untidy. Let's leave it to the funeral parlour people and take that dead body away so we don't have to deal with it. And even, birth is opening up a lot more now, but just a generation or so ago, people were, shaved and cleaned and enema out and then, made all nice and clean before they had this baby, and men were kept out of the room and, so we're trying to separate, put our, put the wheel into little boxes and separate us up. And I think people can cope more with birth now than they did in those few generations, because they always did. And then medical science took over and they were in control. But I think we're getting more control of birth, although it's still a bit of a fight. The rate of cesareans and that are going up. So, but death and dying is still pretty much taboo and pretty much controlled by science and the profession.
Yeah, I think you're so right. I remember I used to think, I don't get the term death midwifery until I found myself doing death midwifery. And one of the instances was with my father. So it took him 3 days to die. And in that process, I felt I've never had children of my own. So I haven't been in that part of the thing. But at that end of life thing, those 3 days, I thought, gosh, this really is a labor. And for me, watching on the first day, every breath I thought was going to be his last, just in the same with the birth, everyone's saying, this contraction's going to be it. So the first day I was like, oh my God, I just, can't even look away in case he dies. The second day, and I was still thinking about time and my time, my day. Oh, I've got to go home and feed the dogs and whatever, it was. The second day, I thought, oh yeah, he's possibly not going to die today. By the third day, I just got so unhooked from time. It was beautiful. It was very shamanic. Time just, time, we step outside of time in the same way as a woman giving birth or going through labor. The other thing that it really taught me was on that last day, increasingly, I found myself doing a lot more breath work with my father. By me slowing my breath and just sort of counting it out, I was able to help him slow his breathing a bit and get a bit more relaxed. And as soon as a nurse or someone would come in the room, he was in a rest home, up his breath would go again. But that exercise of the way time steps outside of time and the way that breath becomes so important in both those experiences, I found really interesting. Just the way that we can work with the breath to help somebody breathe to give birth and breathe to leave their body was really amazing for me. So I'm interested in your thoughts on this whole idea now of death midwifery, end-of-life doulas, death doulas, death walkers, whatever the terminology is. How do you see that role, and where do you see that heading from your experience within the health profession as a nurse and your own understanding of your personal experience of living with, an illness that has, a prognosis of its own? Where do you see that doula, in the same, there is a birth doula and there's a death doula? Could you talk a bit about that from your perspective?
The way our society is going, there will be a big need for them because that was just the thing people did, like you, that was part of your journey through life. You were young, and as you got older, you took on more responsibilities, and you'd sit with your aunties or your grandparents or whoever, and then your parents as they died, and you'd learn those skills, But because we are fragmented, families don't often have the same support, siblings are all over the world. People don't have as large families sometimes, extended families, or if they do, they're somewhere else. And so people are often isolated, they don't have that support, and you need it. And so I think people like a death doula will be very helpful for people that don't have that support. Because it's a time of life where the dying and the grieving people both need support, and so somebody who's at peace or is okay with that as just another part of life can come in and help those dying or grieving people to get through that stage. So I think we'll see more people getting into this role, as like your this course that you're taking, and people are doing it because they can see a need.
My kind of dream in all of this is, I'm doing this training now for people who want to be an end-of-life carer in a natural way. And I have to say, people on that course, included in them are hospice nurses and various therapists and things. So it's really interesting to see that. But I also really want to offer up ways like the conversation, the workshop conversation we had, just for people who don't need to have the certificate on the wall and all of that sort of thing as well, but for family members to care for family members, or for friends to care for friends. And I part of my odyssey is, yes, there's an aspect of it that helps people be equipped, that other people can feel confident, that they can engage them to help them. But equally, I want to be able to help people help the people they love. And
that's great, because I think that is most important, you know.
Yeah.
That is most important, because people, that's who they want around them, I would imagine, unless you had a real, you know, like we're all a little bit dysfunctional, but if you had a really dysfunctional family where, you know, everybody was at each other's throats, you know,
Yeah.
but even then,
You need a referee.
Yeah. So I think that would be I can see that being a big role. People just, oh, you know, this is okay.
Yeah.
We don't need to be scared.
No.
Because we've been separated from death. People are scared of us, you know. But when you're able to be part of that sort of thing, and I mean, I think I've been blessed, not only because professionally I've had to deal with death, but you know, in just living, we have been lucky. We have seen our relations looking after the old people. We've been able to look after our own parents at home, and they've been able to die at home. So even our nephews and nieces have been part of that. And so, you know, everybody, you have to live it.
Yeah.
You know, and then you see, oh, well, it's not like in the movies, you know, they're not going to rise up and become a zombie and chase you around the room or something, you know. You know, it's these sort of fears that people have, isn't it? But if you can live it, and these courses that you'll do that will show people how they can do it, so that they'll have the confidence, and then that'll teach their children and their nieces and nephews. And it's going back to how it was before, I suppose, science and people took over, institutional care took over.
I was watching an interview with someone the other day. I think it's Dr. Elaine Meyer, I think that's the right name, in the States, wonderful palliative care specialist. And she was saying that something like up until the Second World War, most people died at home, you know. So let's say it was 90% of people would die at home, and others would die in a hospital or out of, you know, some awful accident or something. Now it's almost, you know, kind of reverse. People are dying in rest homes and in hospices and hospitals and things like that. And there has been a real shift away from the home thing. And then coming along with that has also embalming, you know, the funeral thing of embalming has taken off, and that got triggered by bringing bodies home from the war, the Second World War. And so then that rose, and so there's just been this shutting away. I also hope to see that, you know, funeral homes and funeral directors and things get and you do see some getting much more inclusive with the family and helping them care. And again, I'm also doing some stuff for funeral directors as well, around how to bring nature and natural things into that process of body care. If you had to, I'm putting you on the spot here, if you wanted to give a couple of words of advice, love, and encouragement to your family now, what would you give them?
I think I would tell them that we're blessed to have family. You know, family's not always easy, you know, and if you have a sort of a larger family, you're going to have personality clashes, people thinking this, people thinking that. You know, you often have to work at relationships, but that sets you up for life. And knowing that you've always got support, you know, like you don't have to do things by yourself, that I would tell them that we're blessed to have that, because not everybody has it. And I would tell them that relationships, family relationships, and family may not always be blood either.
Yeah.
So, but for people in general, family relationships, love, those are the important things in life. You look at the rich and the famous, they're always going off to rehab or, stuff,
Yeah.
like those aren't the things that are going to make you feel warm inside. It's people and your relationships with them, and being open to things. Yeah, being open to people. Not always having to know everything.
Yeah.
Trusting yourself, trusting your instinct, getting up off the couch, moving your ass around, and get out into nature.
Yeah.
Those sort of things. Yeah.
What has your druid family and your druid experience given to you along this journey of your life?
My druid family is it's great because we share, we look at things very differently. We come from very different backgrounds, but we share the respect for, I suppose, nature, like for the planet, for the wheel of life. And being a druid has really attuned me into that, because I think a lot of us often are so busy, we don't notice the sun coming up or the red sky when the sun goes down. We don't notice that there's a little tui hopping across the roof. We just miss all those things because we're busy getting to work, making money, doing whatever we have to do. And Druidry says, hey, we're doing, we're having Beltane or spring equinox. So, what does that mean? Oh yeah, it's springtime. Look at those trees out there. Look at the blossoms, and so, and that's what happens at this. Oh yeah, and then you look at, that's right. The seed that has been in the earth in the dark of winter is now starting to bloom up, and that has connotations of all sorts of things. Of the germinating ideas and blossoming them, and what and in the autumn and winter, things dying and going back in, and how sometimes that's what has to happen with our projects, our lives. So Druidry, you sort of know those things. People know those things, but they don't. And Druidry makes you stop. And, okay, this is what we're doing on today. On this ritual, this is what we are. Oh, my God, that's what's happening in the world. And, gosh, that's just like, I felt tired. I felt like I don't want to go out. I just want to stay in bed in my little cave in the winter. So it just makes you reflect on what's happening in your life. And I just so love that about Druidry,
Yeah.
And so it makes people able to deal with, okay, well, this is just another wheel. This is just another spoke of the wheel, really, on the journey of the wheel of life, the wheel of the year, the wheel of whatever. Yeah. And I'd thank them. I'd thank my Druid family for sharing those times with me. Yeah.
Wonderful. Wonderful. When we met that weekend, I was watching the evening sun dropping behind the South Island and down into the sea. And I'd been thinking very much about Druidry and things, and also because my background, I was born in England, British, came here when I was a child. And I've had this sort of tension between the two parts a bit. I am that person. But I am this person from New Zealand as well, who's lived here for so long, and the land has a special energy here. But what I really loved was that I'd suddenly I thought, oh, as that sun is dropping away from my sky, it's rising in my other sky. And I thought of the way that nature helps us connect to all of the parts that we are. And if something gives us a lens to look at that through, whether it's druidry or some other nature-based form of spirituality, or just going for a walk in the park, whatever it is, but if we have that lens, gosh, it gives us so many ways of connecting us to I think just the amazingness of life, even in really difficult times and a kind of crazy world. So that brings me to the place in nature, a landscape that nourishes you. And you have shared with me and with us the Abel Tasman. Can you talk a bit about what that landscape that gives you?
Well, I think it's that mix of bush, sea, hills, those are, that might sound cliched really, but those are my places. Like most weeks I'll go for a couple of walks in the bush, and quite often I'll feel like, I need to go down to the sea and walk along the Petone foreshore and things like that. So I'm surrounded, where I live, I'm blessed. I'm surrounded by trees and hills and bush, and I actually, that picture of that part of the Abel Tasman really spoke to me of, oh gosh, that encompasses all those places I love to be and get a big kick.
Yeah.
And I have actually walked the track many, many years ago, and I just love being out in those places. They really do. If I don't get out to somewhere near water or somewhere near bush, I start to think, oh, need to go out there. But I am surrounded by it here, in my little part of suburbia. So I'm so blessed, really. I think that whole thing is coming back in, that connection to the trees and how, what do they call it, forest bathing in Japan or something? There's a word for it. Yeah. And you feel so much better for it. So I like to drag my creaky body out there and
good on you.
hug a tree and all that sort of druidery thing.
Yeah.
It just makes me feel so alive. And
wonderful.
Yeah.
That's really beautiful. Oh, Jo, look, thank you so much for this. And before we go, is there any one more thing that you'd like to add, or words of wisdom or insight or humor or...
Well, I'll have to dig deep for the wisdom. Thank you very much for interviewing me and letting me share some of my thoughts with people. I guess it's just so many of us are scared of death and dying in our society, that for people who are dying, that have to deal with it, I think, reach out to those that can help you. You don't have to be scared, but it's easy for people to say that. Don't be scared, because you can only be what you feel. So sometimes you just have to go with your instinct. And for people who are caring, for people who are dying, just follow your instinct, because love really will see you through, basically.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
That's what I think, anyway.
Yeah, that's a beautiful way to end. Joanna, thank you so much. Joe, thank you. It's been an absolute delight, and I look forward to seeing you again with the Grove of the Summer Stars.
Yes, we all look forward to seeing you too, Georgina.
Good.
We'll be expecting you in the next couple of months anyway.
Yeah, I'll
when
be
you
there.
can manage it.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks. It's been such a privilege and a joy to spend this time with Joanna Huriwai. Thank you so much, Joanna, for all your insight and your wisdom. The painting that Joanna was talking about in this interview is by the artist Robin Kahukiwa. I love Joanna's advice. So simple. Follow your instinct, because love will see you through. I'm Joanna Langdale. This has been another episode of The Soul Garden, and you can find my offerings and courses and coaching at centernatureconnection.org.